What is up, you awesome human beings? So, I want to talk today about mindfulness from my perspective and how mindfulness has impacted my life and how I interact with it in my day to day, and just how insanely potent a tool for personal exploration, for spiritual growth, for personal, professional, relationships, you name it. And I'm not interested in telling you why you should or shouldn't practice mindfulness. That's not what I'm here for. You don't need another person telling you how to live your life. There's plenty of those folks on the internet, and I'm not intending to be one of them. So this is purely my story with this profound and ultimately life-changing practice. In my case, it has been. And yeah, if anyone resonates with my story and what I have to say about mindfulness and meditation and a couple of other bits and bobs that I might get onto, then wonderful. And if you don't resonate with it, then no stress. There is an infinite treasure trove of content for you on the internet, my friend, so keep on swiping. So, when did I get into mindfulness, or when did I get introduced to mindfulness? Maybe the more poignant question. And I think I was about 28 years old, and I was given the book by Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. Now, that's not strictly a mindfulness book. There's a lot of crossover with mindfulness, but just to be clear, I'm not about to say that Eckhart Tolle is a mindfulness teacher or that The Power of Now is a book on mindfulness. There's a lot of crossover, but that was what planted the seed for me. And I didn't get it. I didn't really get it. I felt drawn to it. I felt drawn to the content, the concepts in there, listening to my inner world, differentiating between thoughts and feelings, starting to pull the thread of what is the difference between reaction and response, how I relate to suffering, the difference between suffering and pain, so on. Lots of different concepts here. And of course, for the first time ever, the concept of my separate self, ego identified identity, personally identified ego identity. And yeah, I felt there was something there. I wanted to get it. I knew that the way I was living my life was not fulfilling for me. It wasn't healthy, for sure. It wasn't healthy for my physical or my mental well-being. And I felt totally stagnant in my life in general. I knew there was something there, but it didn't quite stick. I didn't really get it. And looking back on it now, perhaps that's because I was still in the throes of addiction. You know, I was 28 then, so that's only 6 years after I very nearly died of an accidental drug overdose. I very nearly lost my life on that occasion. Luckily, I did wake back up after having a seizure, so all good. And that near-death experience was ultimately a moment of rebirth for me. And in many ways, although incredibly painful and scary, one of perhaps the most important and quote-unquote best kind of things that ever happened to me in my life. Fundamentally altered the trajectory of my life and inspired me to become accountable for my own behaviors and responsible for my self-worth and self-love. And so I was still in the throes of this. I was still recreationally getting on a session, which for anyone who has never done drugs before just means casually doing drugs, but for maybe multiple days at a time. I was still drinking heavily by myself and not looking after myself and unaware of it. In my mind, I was like, yeah, this is fine. I can have a few glasses of wine, or I can have a whiskey after work. No worries, all good. I can have a bit of Coke on the weekend. I can do this, I can do that. Yeah, no worries, all good. Just pure self-deception. And then all the while, my mental health was a million miles an hour nosediving into the ground on a spiral, but I was there with an ego that was just becoming to be spiritually informed and therefore spiritually bypassing all of this stuff. I could write a whole book on that one. Maybe I will, who knows, maybe I'll make it a graphic novel or a comic book just to make it easier on the eye. So yeah, I was there living in the throes of addictive behavior patterns, seeking soothing in relationships, desperately trying to understand my wounding through the lens of others, basically. Will this person help me? Will that person help me? Will that substance help me? Will this experience help me? And the answer, of course, is no. It's literally not possible. Even when I ended up working with a therapist, the therapist didn't, quote unquote, help me. The therapist held up a mirror for me to explore myself. So that's a very brief snapshot of where I was in my life. There's lots more to it, but a brief snapshot. And then I'm attempting to integrate this thing called mindfulness into my life. Okay, there's something here. I know there's something here. I can feel it. And I suppose it was more motivated by the sense in here of emptiness that was starting to understand I cannot fill this void with anything outside of myself. It's not possible. I cannot scratch this itch with anything outside of myself. It has to come from within. So I think it was more motivated by a deep knowing that the way I was living my life was not fulfilling. It was not compassionate to me. It was not healthy. It was not inspiring. It was not passionate. I was a full, straight up robot on autopilot, just being thrown around, a total slave to my own wounds and the reactive behavior patterns that were manifesting as a result of those wounds. And it didn't quite stick, so I left the book, but I did continue trying to meditate. Wasn't learning mindfulness, but I was still trying to at least meditate, because that was the one thing I could kind of wrap my head around that, because it seems like a doing. Sitting to meditate, I'm doing meditation, as I understood it at the time. It seemed like that's something I can get my head around that. Okay, cool. I am setting aside time in my day. I'm putting a timer on my phone. These are doing, this is actions. Okay, great. And I suppose in that way, I kind of found myself a sort of back door into mindfulness just by repetition alone. And it's hilarious. I look back on it now and it's so funny, not laughing at myself or anyone who may be experiencing what I'm about to describe. Just, it's funny how I totally misunderstood mindfulness and meditation. And to me, it really was a doing. And I even remember having a conversation with my friend who was also getting into my meditation. And I said, man, I had a really deep meditation the other day. I just started to feel it. I just started to get it, man. Yeah, yeah. At first I was all over the place and my thoughts were in the way, and then I felt it. The elusive it. I'm not really even sure what it was, but whatever I experienced in that meditation, I clearly felt moved by it, and I felt I had discovered the next level in meditation and mindfulness. And well, fast forward over time, and my relationship to mindfulness and meditation has changed. And it was actually when I started working with a therapist who happened to be a mindfulness practitioner herself, and it was very poignant timing, great timing for me, very nurturing moment in my personal journey. And at that point, I was introduced to the book Full Catastrophe Living by Jon Kabat-Zinn, which, for anyone just getting into mindfulness, that is not the book I would start with. It's a fantastic book. It's a book for life. It's about that big. So maybe don't start there. It is an absolute treasure trove of just the most wonderful information. A lot of it research backed. In fact, it is predominantly a research backed, scientific based book in the world of mindfulness and the therapeutic, I suppose, yeah, it's if you want to learn a little bit about mindfulness and you want to dip your toes in, I would recommend Jon Kabat-Zinn's book, Wherever You Go, There You Are. Fantastic. Super relatable. You can read that thing in little bite-sized chunks. Anyway, what I was saying. So I was introduced to that book, Full Catastrophe Living, and that was total game changer. And I began to see mindfulness as a practice. Now, by that point, I had freed myself of drug addiction. I was engaging in relationships in a much more healthy way. Therapy was extremely helpful with that. And I knew myself a little bit better. And I was at that point able to engage with mindfulness, not from a desperation that my life needs to change, but rather a curiosity. And I engaged with mindfulness from the aspect of a total beginner, which interestingly enough is one of the attitudes that we teach in mindfulness, the beginner's mind. And it was a privilege. I felt a real privilege to be introduced to and begin walking through this incredible world. And shifting from this kind of victimized state of, well, maybe mindfulness will fix me, to I'm grateful as a student. Please teach me. I'm eager to learn. And I feel privileged to be able to implement this into my life. That shift was profound, and that was the real game changer. And it was through mindfulness, alongside therapy. But the thing is, with therapy, therapy is well, for me, it was once a week. That's 1 hour a week, deep dive sessions. But my therapist isn't there in between, just like I'm not there for my mindfulness students in between sessions. And this is the thing about mindfulness, whether you have a therapist or not, whether you have a mindfulness teacher or not, whatever, whether you have a coach or not, that professional, the teacher, the coach, the therapist, they cannot build your practice for you. Yeah? There's no teacher, therapist or coach that's going to come to your house every day and make sure you're sitting for that meditation, or ask you, was that a reaction or was that a response? Or is that a judgment you're having right now? No one's going to do that. And if any teacher or coach or therapist says they're going to, I would question that individual's intentions and integrity, and you might have, I don't know, sounds like a slight sociopath perhaps, someone who wants to come into your house and tell you how to live. But anyway, probably not someone with the best of intentions. So the point being is, it's all on you, and it was all on me, and I needed that. It's very, very important. I was very grateful for the guidance that I was receiving from this mentor. I was super grateful for the guidance and learning I was receiving from the books I was reading, and the guided meditations that I didn't even know was a thing until then. But ultimately, the person who has to do the nitty-gritty, actually roll up the sleeves and ironically, there's a paradox in mindfulness, which I'll get onto, do the building of a practice, is me. There's no one else in the world that could have done that. And I needed that for a variety of reasons pertaining to the very complex nature of my psychological wounding, where I felt incompetent, incapable of building or doing anything correct. And I questioned every single decision I made, and I would have decision paralysis, and I would procrastinate for days, and I would just abandon anything that I was passionate about. I would abandon it, because the moment even just a smidge of self-doubt came in, that was it, a game over. Because that smidge would be a tidal wave within 12 to 24 hours, and that's it. I've lost, or I've defeated myself, effectively. So, really powerful there, that no one could, quote unquote, do it but myself. And it becomes a way of being in that regard. It becomes a way of being. It's not going to school and learning from a textbook. It's not following this set of rules, and because you follow this set of rules, you're a member of the club. No. It's a way of being. Yes, there are guidelines, of course. There are proven strategies or I suppose techniques and methodologies within mindfulness that we can use and are proven time and time again. Sure. But they're not rules. They're not commandments. And I'm not answerable to anyone other than myself. And that is actually a lesson that is applicable and so beneficial to pretty much every single aspect of life outside of mindfulness too. And I think perhaps society in general would benefit from a bit more of that across the board, whatever your background. Personal accountability, personal responsibility, and this is not to tip into just individualization of your journey, but personal responsibility for myself, so that I can be the best version of myself. Yes, for myself, but also for my community and people who depend on me, and for my relationships. So I think it's a very important distinction to make. This is definitely a mistake that I made no mistakes. A lesson that I learned along the way is that it can often be deceptive, that so much inner work, so much personal work can lead us to regard our journey as that of an individual. And yes, I am an individual, but guess what? The individual can only possibly exist in relation to the group or the community or society. So a side note there. So when I teach mindfulness, the first lesson, literally the first chunk of the very first lesson when I teach a course, an 8-week course, where I dive into it, is I break mindfulness down into 3 constituent parts or aspects or ways of relating to it. And this is my perspective. You don't have to agree with this. There are probably mindfulness teachers out there who would disagree, and that's fine. That's another one of my favorite things about mindfulness. Because there are no commandments, you're welcome to relate to it in whichever way you choose to. If there are any mindfulness teachers who disagree with that, holler at me and let's have an interesting chat. Okay. So part one is the essence of mindfulness. So mindfulness in essence is undistracted awareness. Nothing more, nothing less. Everything that you have ever done, created, said, experienced, every conversation you've had has happened in awareness. So for me, it makes an awful lot of sense to learn how to inhabit that state of awareness with greater ease and more often. So that's part one. Mindfulness, the essence of mindfulness is undistracted awareness. Part two is the practice of awareness. This is the doing, if you like. We'll get more into why it's not really a doing, but it is and it isn't, and it's a paradox. So the practice of mindfulness. This is practicing the skill of moment-to-moment awareness without judgment of whatever comes up. Part two is the practice. This is the doing, if you like. Paradoxical, doing, not doing. We'll get into that. And the practice of mindfulness. You can think of this as practicing the skill of paying attention to moment awareness without judgment and with compassion for whatever arises in the spirit of self-understanding and compassion for self and other. So when I think of the practice of mindfulness, I think about, well, what are the tools that I use or engage with to practice mindfulness? Meditation is one of them. Breathwork is another one of them. Movement is another one of them. Journaling. It can be anything you really want, really. But this is the practice. This is, what do I quote unquote do to hone the skill of present moment awareness, or hone the skill of inhabiting awareness more often and with greater ease. And to hark back to what I said a moment ago, why would you want to do that? Sounds like an awful lot of effort to be basically doing nothing and just being. Well, because everything of value that you've ever done in your life has come from awareness, has happened in awareness. There's been many, many, many things that you have experienced, or have you experienced it if you're on autopilot? I don't know. Who knows? Those times where you're driving your car and all of a sudden you're just at the destination, you have no recollection of driving. You were doing, but were you there? Or when you're eating something, eating food, someone's made the effort to make you a lovely meal, or you've made the effort to make yourself a lovely meal. You taste the first bite, and then the next time you tune back into the room, you're having your last bite. It barely touched the sides, and it's like, oh, I guess I had dinner then. All right, cool. You did, but were you there? And whilst I'm not suggesting for a moment that anyone would want to, I certainly would not want to be mindful all of the time. God no, I lose my mind. I think it'd be incredibly stressful trying to be 100% present and mindful 100% of the time. Sounds like a lot. We need those automated behaviors. That's what the subconscious is there for, to automate things. I don't need to go through every little step of changing gear when I drive my car like I did the first time I ever drove. I don't need to do that. Thank you, subconscious, for automating things. Good on you, mate. I don't need to focus super hard when I'm brushing my teeth. It's okay for me to switch off there, all gravy. The point being is that I absolutely prefer my life, since I've learned to inhabit present moment awareness more of the time, and to be able to choose, to empower myself to choose to disengage from automatic behavior patterns and thought patterns, and to choose to drop into the present moment so that I can be here as myself, not as a drone, for myself, to engage with this incredible gift of life, to engage with the people that I'm with in the moment, show up better for my relationships. So that's the practice. And the third part is the way of being, which I alluded to a moment ago. And this is really perhaps most challenging for Westerners to engage with, because our entire existence, practically, for the overwhelming majority of people, from the very, very young age, is oriented around and encouraged towards outcome-oriented, goal-oriented endeavors. Yeah? Good job. Never mind the effort. Never mind the journey. What do you get out of it? And this individualized approach to life and living. You are more important than the collective. You should have your independent freedoms. And by the way, don't get me wrong, I totally agree. Independence is great. I'm an extremely independent individual, but I am also not going to lie to myself that I am not interdependent. We are social beings. We are social creatures. And we are effectively lied to en masse by, the global economic system and the corporate interest, which is a different podcast, I think. But you look at any clothing advert, or any advert really, for a product or a good, and it's all about how if you buy this product, you've got another part of your identity. That's what makes you unique. Are you this brand? Are you this brand? What does this brand say about you? And it encourages it because it plants a story in here, and then that story becomes a part of our identity. And I think we need to be really careful of that. So this is the way of being, is letting go of that. I don't practice mindfulness to add some perceived value to myself or my existence. Used to. I used to. And even sometimes I notice my ego creeping in and telling me like, yeah, well done, man. You've meditated for like 150 days straight. Pat yourself on the back, dude. And then I realize like, hey, whoa, that's not why I meditate. All right. And then I'll deliberately do something different just to shake it up. So it's letting go of this. Why am I engaging with it? What's the benefit? What do I get out of this? It's okay. It's okay to feel those things. And it is, how could we not experience those thoughts and feelings growing up in this society? It would be impossible. I certainly don't see how it's possible. And I've spent the last 6 years of my life uprooting those beliefs, uprooting those plastic, hollow, external values that were given to me and that I absorbed because I didn't know what else to do, or I didn't understand the difference between how I felt and how someone else wanted me to feel, and I didn't understand the difference between how I thought and felt about a situation and how I thought I should feel in order to be and fill whatever role was required of me, or I thought was required of me. Didn't understand that back then. To understand 6 years. Hey. So this is the way of being, and this is engaging with mindfulness for the sake of it. And if I ever forget why, or if I'm ever like, well, why am I doing this again? Why am I setting aside this big chunk of my day to sit in silence? Oh yeah, in the spirit of self-love and compassion. So the three elements, the essence, the practice, the way of being, they support each other, and they support me in that way. And incredibly grateful. I think one of my favorite things about mindfulness is that there is no barrier to entry. Well, I suppose you need to be able to breathe. If you can breathe, you can practice mindfulness. Yeah, it is not rooted in a spiritual tradition, although it can be spiritual if you choose for it to be. I certainly engage with it in a way that, for me, it is quite profoundly spiritual. And in fact, even then, separate to that, it's rather the tool, the skills that I have honed in mindfulness, and the way of being, and the mindset, the attitude that I have adopted and live by through practicing mindfulness. They support my spiritual growth. They support my other practices. They are absolutely fundamentally important in my exploration with plant medicines and psychedelics. They are absolutely fundamental in my exploration with music and my creative expression and the impact that has on me. And many other applications. So it's not rooted in a spiritual or religious tradition, but it can be if you choose for it to be. You're not breaking any rules there. You are making your own journey, right? You're carving your own path. Another one of the ways in which mindfulness has completely and radically changed the way I am with myself, and ultimately changed my life for that reason, is my relationship with my body. How I feel in my body. And also how I relate to emotions and the difference between thoughts and emotions. And those are intrinsically linked, thoughts, emotions, and the body. Not inextricably linked, as I learned through mindfulness, and I'm about to share a bit now. But yeah, the connection there is so important to understand. And if we understand it even just a little bit, man, anyone can empower themselves to quite radically change, transform the way they relate to their mind and their emotions as they arise in their body. And that can be total game changer, complete breakthrough for anyone willing to just give it a go. So the first thing is, if we play a game here, and I encourage you to listen along. If you want to, you can close your eyes, and I encourage you to use your imagination. So you are walking down a street and you see someone coming towards you from the other direction, on the same side of the pavement as you. And you know this person very, very well, someone very close to you. So you wave and you say, "Hey, how's it going?" And that person just walks straight on by. Don't acknowledge you. They don't wave goodbye. They don't wave hello back. They just blank you and walk past. Okay, you can open your eyes now. First thing, what thoughts and what emotions came up for you there? What were the thoughts and what were the emotions? And they're very distinct. And if you're not sure the difference between the two, I'll perhaps go into that in a little bit more detail now, in a moment. Now, when I teach this, a lot of people say, or common answers that I get are, "How the hell didn't they see me? That's rude." And then they tell me that they feel angry or sad or rejected. Some people say, another popular answer is, "I hope they're all right. I wonder what's going on with them." And they feel concerned or worried. And I also had one person today, this morning, in fact, he actually said he was relieved, because if he's out in public and he's walking down the street and he sees someone and he can't be bothered to talk to, he would actually rather they didn't have that chit chat. So he felt relieved, which I found really funny. That was the first time I had that response. So just take a moment to reflect on how you felt and what you thought. And if you are like 99% of the population, or everyone that I've ever taught, the thought came first and then the emotion followed. If that's not you and you had a different experience, give me a message. Let's talk. That sounds interesting. I want to hear about what you experienced. In fact, if any of you want to share what you experienced, then let's talk. Get in touch. But most of you will have experienced the thought, whatever it was for you, and then an emotion. Some people may not even be aware of the emotion, and that's okay. Just to be clear, that's all right. We are not taught to be with our emotions, let alone how to be with our emotions. In fact, we are overwhelmingly taught to suppress our emotions in favor of being a certain person, being a certain way, filling a certain role. For most people in the Western industrialized society, it is far more important to show up as you are expected to, rather than honor what is actually happening in your world. And there is a time and a place for that, being able to show up and put a brave face on. There is, for sure, like, not denying it. That may be an unpopular opinion, but I do personally believe there are times when we do actually need to white knuckle and just bear the pain and crack on, because that in the long run is what's more compassionate. But as a way of being, to just suppress, absolutely not. I am not for that at all. That's a huge part of what I have been uprooting and healing over the last 6+ years. So, if you're like most people, you would have had a thought, and then you would have had an emotion. And this is something that I learned. Most of what I was feeling, and in fact, even to this day, even though I am a mindfulness teacher, I have been for 3-4 years now, most of the emotions that I feel, and probably you as well, most people, the emotion is not as a response to the actual situation. The emotion is to the thought. Because let's take two of those common answers I talked about. One common answer from my students is, how rude of them equals angry. And another person is, "Oh God, I'm really concerned," equals worry. Already, those are two drastically different ways to read that situation. That means no one knows what the actual situation is. You have no idea, unless you actually, in that hypothetical situation, unless you actually spoke to and asked that person to clarify exactly how they're feeling, and that's assuming that they're able to eloquently and clearly describe to you what's going on for them and why they didn't talk to you, which some people might not be able to, because as I've just discussed, most of us don't know how to tap into and then share our feelings. That means that both people, the people who thought that's rude and felt angry, and the people who thought, oh gosh, I hope they're okay, and felt worried, both of them were responding to their thoughts. If there was an objective truth in that situation, like that person was walking around with a sign that says, I'm feeling sad, please don't talk to me, well, okay, that's different. But the fact is, these two large groups of students, they have totally, completely different reactions to the same stimulus. You do not feel in response to the situation most of the time. You feel as a reaction to your thoughts most of the time. So what's the lesson here? The lesson here is that my mind has a script writer living in it who is constantly, at an alarming rate, just typing up story after story after story after story, perpetually. And my subconscious, which it has a very, very strong connection to my body, laps it up, takes it as gospel, and then it gives me the corresponding emotion that it thinks I'm supposed to feel. And so in this way, if we're not careful, if we're not mindful, those stories become our life. That was absolutely true for me. I wasn't living the life of Ryan. I didn't even know who the hell I was. I had no idea who the hell I was. My life was a series of stories and reactions to the stories, and then emotions as a result of those reactions. And then because those reactions were taking root in my body, my mind then decided, well, now I feel validated, more thoughts. That's how it works. There's a reciprocity between the conscious, the subconscious mind and the body. And it just goes and it goes and it goes. Now, the wonderful thing about that is, with a little bit of effort and a little bit of mindfulness, well, there are many ways to do this, but in keeping with mindfulness is one of my favorite ways to go about this. With a little bit of effort and curiosity and compassion, we can harness that cycle of reciprocity, literally reprogram our mind to reprogram our body, which then creates an upward spiral between our subconscious, our conscious, our mind and our body. You can literally change the neural programming in your brain. There is strong neuroscientific research that demonstrates this cycle of reciprocity has an impact on the neural pathways within the brain. On a physiological level, the brain will reorient and physically change the mapping of your neural pathways based on what your subconscious is telling your brain it should feel in certain situations. So if you or I have fallen into a pattern where I always respond to a situation in this way or in that way, and I'm not aware that it's just a reaction, I am giving my subconscious not just a free pass, I'm encouraging it to continue to physiologically mold my brain in this autopilot robot reaction way that probably, just gonna guess, if my lived experience is anything to go by, probably not in my best interests. It's probably not really healthy for me. It's probably not allowing me to be the best version of myself for my friends, my loved ones. Probably. Or in my professional relationships. Sure as hell it wasn't helping me look after myself, that's for sure. And then, in more recent years, I have learnt, well, what am I feeding? What am I feeding into this cycle of reciprocity? What is the fuel I am putting in? You are what you eat doesn't just apply to food. It's far beyond that. It would be perhaps more accurate to just say, in a broader sense, you are what you consume. You are what you reciprocate. As within, so without, as the Hermetic principle goes. And so in this way, I've learned to feed myself healthy content, and that includes my thoughts. It also does include external content. I very rarely. I mean, I don't even have a Netflix account, for example, and that doesn't mean I think I'm better than anyone. I totally love a cheeky binge every now and again. I've just learned that for me, it's more it's more compassionate for me to keep those binges to a very rare occasion. What with the history of an addict, you can imagine I have a little bit of trouble dipping in and out of that one. I tend to dip in and get stuck. So it's just easier for me. But more in terms of the content that I feed myself from here. What am I putting in here? Yeah, what do I tell myself about who I am and who I want to be? What do I tell myself is possible with my life, to do with my life? What values do I feed myself and do I orient myself around and align myself with to support my decision making? Am I feeding myself faith in my decision making? Am I feeding my subconscious and my nervous system the message that I am competent and capable, and that I am healthy, and that I do know how to look after myself, and I do love myself? Or do I sometimes, when I make a mistake, call myself a fucking idiot or whatever, which I do sometimes. And thanks to, again, mindfulness practice, because I'm now inhabiting awareness more often than not, I can notice that. And that for me is a red flag. And I say, oh, wow, geez, I'm like criticizing myself. I'm being really harsh to myself. I just called myself an idiot. Oh, God, why did I do that? Because I stubbed my toe. Wait, what? That doesn't make sense. I got hurt and I'm insulting myself. Oh, geez, I must be feeling extremely stressed right now. Okay, let's take a break. Because I used to live that way most of the time. Beat myself up. Really, really malicious, nasty things I would say to myself. Horrible. And ironically, generally, because I was behaving in ways that were creating more pain and suffering. Yeah, gosh. It's like a child who makes a mistake. Would you chastise that child and shout at them and call them an idiot? Or would you soothe that child and let them know that it's all right, mistakes happen, let's learn from it? And for me, that was a big one, because it's like, why? Of course, I would never speak that way I talk to myself to a child or to a friend, ever. Never have, I don't believe. But I absolutely do to myself sometimes. And it's thanks to mindfulness, inhabiting present moment awareness. I suppose this is where the way of being comes in. I'm able to identify, oh, geez, wow, that came up from somewhere. All right, what wants to be heard? What wants to be heard, and what needs to be felt? What part of me, what part of my psyche, what part of my soul is seeking soothing right now? What was that reaction in response to, really? Because it probably wasn't to the fact that I stubbed my toe. There's something else, a little bit deeper than that. Although I do hate stubbing my toes, but anyway. So, yeah, this way of being in a way that is far more compassionate for self, far more compassionate for other, consequently of how much effort I am investing into my present moment awareness and the way in which I am living in alignment with my values, rather than just being completely thrown around and enslaved by impulses, thrown around and bullied by thoughts that don't serve me at all. There's a wonderful phrase or a quote, I don't remember who said it now. The mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. And I guess in a nutshell as well, that could be a pretty solid way of describing mindfulness. Mindfulness is a practice, or is a very, very beneficial, very powerful tool for renegotiating the mind for renegotiating the relationship between you and your mind. Because you are not your mind. If that's a moment for anyone, then let's talk. But you are not your mind. I am not my mind. That was another huge game changer that mindfulness supported me in coming to realize. The mind is something that I experience. And that was, again, an upward trajectory. An upward trajectory of healing from addiction and healing from depression. And as soon as I was able to put a little bit of distance between me and the thoughts, me being this infinite, unlimited consciousness that is the space holder and the space that holds that space for my entire existence and my entire experience of reality. Within that consciousness is the mind. as a way of the brain's way of decoding and translating raw experience as it comes in through my five senses. And of course that includes planning for the future with future-bound thoughts, reflecting on the past to make sure things don't go wrong again, or what did I do well, or what did I do bad. Very, very rarely will you find the mind. In fact, I don't know if it's even possible if you can. Yeah. Practically never will you find the mind thinking about the here and now, unless it is labeling it. And so in this way of creating a little bit of distance, a little bit of space between me and my mind and the contents of the mind, wow, liberation, total liberation. Well, not total liberation, because I still live with my mind, and it definitely gets on top of me from time to time. However, just a new way of being able to liberate myself. Incredibly empowering, so freeing. What a weight off my shoulders. I'm not that thought that says I'm worthless. Okay, that is a projection from my ego and wounding and the identity that is the result of my whole lived experience, projecting to me what it thinks I need to hear in order to survive. Perhaps I was told again and again, you're worthless, you're worthless, you're worthless. I wasn't specifically, but I felt worthless for a complex bunch of other reasons. I felt worthless and incompetent, not worthy of loving, due to a complex network of abandonment-related trauma. And so for me, the story was, I'm totally incompetent of being the person I want and need to be. I cannot trust my decisions. No one wants me. Okay, that was the programming, and it took root in my ego as an identity, or a facet of my identity. And on the one hand, whatever is programmed into the identity is received as the mission and the objective, and the ego will orient thought and feeling around that objective. Even if it's pretty fucking bleak, you're not worthy of love. Doesn't matter. If that is the programming that has been instilled in the ego and it has been allowed to take root in the identity, that becomes the mission and the objective. And therefore all behavior will be oriented to that goal. Another aspect of this could be that the ego has decided the risk of being different, the risk of trying to change who I am, that is far too terrifying for the ego, because it means allowing to die a piece of my separate self-identity. That, no thank you. I would rather the tension associated with feeling worthless and feeling unlovable, because that's familiar. I know that. It's not nice, but guess what? We've been doing that for 25 years, Ryan, and we're not dead. And my brain's there, my brain and my nervous system are like, yeah, I guess you're right. Let's just keep on doing it, man, because surviving is better than enjoying life. So, yeah. Coming to understand, or coming to view the mind as a tool within the human experience, or one essential aspect of the human experience. It's like the part of the brain that is there to decode reality through my five senses. Nothing more, nothing less. It's incredibly powerful, we need it, but it's apparatus, it's not me. And creating that space, which mindfulness is a very, very effective teacher of how to do that, completely life-changing. Yeah, completely life-changing. And that, in that way, took me from, at one occasion, starting making plans to end my own life, and dipping in and out of addictive behavior patterns again, and then time off, and then again, to, well, hey, the person that you see sat before you here today. And that doesn't mean my life is perfect. I don't think anyone's life is perfect. No one is perfect. The only thing that's certain is that we're all in change. And for me, it's been a case of contributing to that change in such a way that my life is fulfilling. Creating change and making changes in the spirit of deeper, broader transformation, oriented around a life that is fulfilling, value-driven, heart-led, healthy, in which I feel supported because I can support myself, but because I've built a community of of wonderful, kind, loving human beings, inspiring human beings, and we support one another. So I guess that's kind of the long and short of my journey through mindfulness. And then of course, I then decided that this is so wild and so fascinating. I read a quote in Matthew McConaughey's book Green Light, and you know what's funny? I knew who Matthew McConaughey was. I never would have ever read that book, his autobiography, or listened to the audiobook more specifically, if I hadn't been recommended by a friend. And I'm so happy that he recommended it. I highly recommend it, by the way. It's just a really fun ride. The audiobook in particular is fantastic. Really, really fun. And anyway, one thing he said was, I'm going to paraphrase it here. Less impressed, more involved. What he's saying is there's so many times in life where we'll go through life and we'll be like, oh, that is so cool, that's amazing, that skill, or that thing I want to learn, or I'd love to pick up that skill. And we're just there, impressed by it, and say, oh, that's great, but not me. And so I took his advice, and I thought, well, yeah, evidently I am very, very impressed with this practice. Why the hell am I not getting involved? Okay, cool, I'm going to learn how to teach it. And originally it was just for my own personal development. And eventually, it's now part of my career. And I'm so incredibly grateful to past me for jumping on that opportunity to learn it. And every time I teach, I learn more and more and more about mindfulness and about myself. It is a real privilege to be able to teach this and to be able to work in a field that I am truly passionate about, and that has absolutely, completely changed my life for the better. There is not one single downside to my journey with mindfulness as I have experienced it. And it's just so wonderful. And I know when I teach it, it is open to literally everyone. Like I said, if you can breathe, you can learn. There's no pyramid of worth. It's not that, if you're really rich, you can afford to work with me. Nope. This is a low-cost, accessible journey that anyone can jump in, as long as they are willing to open their mind and open their heart and just give something new a go. And then with creativity as well, there's another great book, The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. Fantastic book. I'm only partly way through it now. And it's almost like a mindfulness book. In fact, I think, I literally listened to a podcast between Rick Rubin and Jon Kabat-Zinn. And Jon Kabat-Zinn commented on Rick's book. And he said, dude, this is a mindfulness book. And so I'm reading it and I can see what he means. I can really see what he means. And as a musician myself, who I've been, oh my God, what an up and down roller coaster it is. And for lots of people it is. There are definitely some people out there who just create, prolific creators. And wow, I am fair play to you. Fair play to you who are able to do that. My journey has been very up and down, tumultuous, you might say. There have been periods of time where I've felt just free flow, and whatever it is. I've played lots of instruments in my life. It used to be all electronic, DJing, music production. More recently, in the last 3 or so years, I picked up the guitar, the didgeridoo, and I started singing again and writing. And for me, it's a case of stutter start. And I can safely say that since I began practicing mindfulness, there has been a steady, yes, there have been ups and downs, of course, but the general, if you zoom out, the trend has been to greater flow, greater ease of creative flow. And I believe, for me, that's because I'm less stuck in my goddamn head thinking about how something should sound, and I'm far more interested in dropping into my body and feeling the music and experiencing what is happening in my body and in my emotional and spiritual worlds at any given moment, and then just opening my mouth and letting the words come out, or getting at the computer and making that piece of music and allowing that whatever that feeling is to come out the speakers or the guitar, whatever it is. Less of this, more of this embodied living, rooted in the here and the now. The body doesn't have a screenwriter, a script writer telling you how to react to each situation. So if you learn to listen to the body, it really can be your number one ally, your best friend, to supporting you in being here and now more often. Less in the head, more in the body. And the more I practice this, the clearer the emotions become. The more I'm able to befriend those emotions, the more I'm able to pinpoint what parts of my body are more likely to demonstrate or present certain emotions to me. And in that way, then I can sort of reverse engineer it for, well, okay, what's going on in my life? And how am I reacting or responding to things in my life as a result? And creatively speaking, because I'm not in here, and I'll say it again, less in here, because I'm not in here, I don't care what anyone else thinks about my music. When people enjoy my positive feedback, it fills my heart with joy. Really, it does. Makes my day, makes my week. Not because I need my ego stroked, but because I've been vulnerable. I have shared from my heart and my soul, and it has touched someone in some way. It has inspired a spark in them, and that is inspiring for me and moving for me. Music is medicine. Sound is medicine. We are literally vibration. If you zoom into the atoms that I am made out of, you will find atoms and subatomic particles vibrating at various frequencies. We are literally vibration. That's not hippie nonsense, by the way. That is astrophysics. Although Buddhists have known about that for thousands of years. So have many traditional religious practices. But hey, it's not real unless Westerners in lab coats prove it, right? So yeah, in this way, it's being present with what I have to share, what wants to come out, what is my soul trying to translate through this human meat suit. And it is such a gift. It really is. I cannot overstate how much more passionate I have allowed myself to be about music and creative expression in general, thanks to practicing not being in my head and not allowing my thoughts to hijack the creative act, and how I have learnt to accept being vulnerable as a teacher and as an act of courage, not weakness. Yeah, really profound, truly life-changing. And I will be sharing more about my journey through music and sound. And it's actually one of the areas that I'm most passionate about coaching, is coaching folks who are working on creative projects and would appreciate a space in which to explore that. Or people who perhaps, like I was, not even that long ago, I was suppressing my creative energy because I didn't think I was worthy of being heard, or even just expressing it for myself, and I was stuck in my head and I couldn't get it out, and I didn't know, should I play this instrument or that instrument, it should be perfect, so on and so on. I'm very passionate about supporting people who maybe aren't sure how to begin, where to begin. And the reason I'm passionate about that is because that has been another key to completely unlocking, or beginning to unlock, a whole new layer of just shedding a skin that didn't fit me anymore, and allowing something more beautiful and uplifting and motivating and fulfilling and touching to come through. So I am going to go ahead and finish this session on a guided meditation, and it's going to be suitable for all levels. This could be, if you already practice mindfulness, you're going to enjoy this one. This could just be a moment for you to settle in and take a moment for yourself in your day, in addition to whatever practice you already have. And if you've never meditated before, this will be appropriate for you. All right. The only condition is, please don't drive while you're doing this. And if you're driving right now, then just skip it and come back to it later, or go to the end of this, or fast forward into this episode. But yeah, just make sure before you join me for this meditation that it is safe for you to do so. Okay. All right. So you can be seated in whatever posture you find most comfortable. You can be seated like I am on a chair, or you can sit cross-legged on the floor. You can kneel, whatever you like. Or just being comfortable is more important. You're also welcome to lay down if that is more accessible for you. The most important thing is, if we're seated, to maintain a straight spine. So we want this balance of feeling relaxed, but also alert and aware. And you can close off your eyes if you haven't done so already. And go ahead and take 3 long, slow, deep breaths in through your nose, and you can sigh those out. So do so at your own pace. And you can just sigh it out. And when you breathe in, let's draw that air from the belly, not from the chest. When we draw it in from the belly, we are sending a message to our nervous system that it is okay to relax. And that it is safe to unwind a little bit right now. And whenever your last breath is coming up, let's let that one be a little bit deeper. Really feel the air filling your body. And just let that one go. And I'd like you to just spend a moment now and pay attention to what it feels like to be seated in this moment. What is the experience of being seated right now? Can you feel gravity drawing you down? Can you feel your feet on the ground? Are you able to notice a tingling in your feet maybe? Or a tingling in your hands as well? And what about, can you feel your clothes against your skin? The wild thing is, all of these sensations are happening to some degree or another. Basically, it's just a matter of what we choose to pay attention to. And now I would like you to focus on the sensations of breathing. That doesn't mean that you need to control your breath or make it be a certain pattern or a certain depth or pace. Specifically focus on the physical sensations of breathing. And I invite you to hone in on the place that you feel it most clearly and naturally. For some people, that's going to be at the tip of the nose, at the nostrils, where you can feel the air a little bit cooler on the way in and a little bit warmer on the way out. For some people, it might be at the back of the throat. And for some people, it might be in the belly or the chest, where you feel the abdomen rising and falling with each cycle of inhale and exhale. Wherever you feel it most naturally, that's perfect for you, okay? There's no right or wrong way to do it. Whichever you choose is just fine. This is what we call your anchor. Let these sensations be your anchor to your body. And in that way, your body, your anchor to the present moment. And as I've been guiding you, you may, in fact, probably have been noticing thoughts attempting to steal your attention. And if that's happening to you, well, good job. It means you're a human being with a mind that works. So that's all good. You're not doing anything wrong. Whenever you find that your mind has become distracted, and that is just the mind doing what the mind has evolved to do, I invite you to make a conscious decision. Choose to detach from that distraction, acknowledge it, and then detach, and choose to return to the practice of witnessing the physical sensations of breathing at your chosen anchor point. And you may need to do this 10 times, 20 times, 100 times, and that's perfectly fine. You might just now be discovering how shockingly prone to distraction the mind is if you've never done this before. And that's perfectly fine. The mind has evolved to label and explain reality as it comes through your senses. So when you close one of those senses, closing the eyes, or when you stop the doing and you start being, just being here in this moment, seated in stillness and silence, well, the mind all of a sudden pipes up, wants to know where all the stimulus has gone. And it might be telling you that you need to think about, what am I having for lunch or dinner? Oh, what's that thing I need to do on my to-do list? Or I feel silly with my eyes closed. You name it, infinite number of things. And it is up to you to decide whether you engage with that content. That's all it is, it's content. You have a choice to whether you want to engage with it. You want to acknowledge that it has arisen, make a conscious decision to shift awareness back to the sensations of breathing at your chosen anchor. And when you do so, I invite you to let go of any judgment. You do not need to label the distraction as bad or good or right or wrong. You certainly do not label yourself as right, wrong, good, bad, because you've been distracted. In the same way that the sounds in your environment occur, exist for a little while, and then subside all by themselves without you having to do anything about it, without you having any control over those sounds. In the same way, you can remove the contents of your mind. As you continue to witness the sensations of breathing at your chosen anchor. You may learn to relate to these moments of acknowledgement, detachment, and returning to center, almost like one in the gym of your mind. You don't go to the gym once and become fit and healthy. It's a practice. We keep returning, we keep effort. We maintain our focus and intention. And so, the more you practice detaching from distraction and returning to present moment awareness, the more familiar you will become with this new habit that you are forming, and the easier and the more comfortable it will become. And in time, with repetition and more practice, you may come to notice, even in meditation, in your day-to-day, maybe even in a conversation, you may notice reactions arising or distractions hijacking your awareness. And you will be empowered to have a greater chance of acknowledging that distraction, of detaching from the story your mind is making around it, and returning to the present moment. Because the present moment is pure truth, my friend. Probably argue it's the only moment that is pure truth. Any memory of the past is likely shaded by inaccuracy and emotion. Any projection to your future is just a fabrication. It's not real. Your body, your breath, and them being the anchor to the present moment. That's where your truth is. Okay, so let your next few breaths be a little bit deeper and more expansive. Again, feel the body, your belly, expanding with each inhale, breathing from the diaphragm. Just a few more breaths, slightly deeper on the inhale, slightly longer on the exhale. Start to zoom out with that awareness and really tune into the cloud of your body, your physical space. Notice if you feel different between now and when you sat down. Perhaps the volume or contents of the mind has changed. And when you're ready, you can just roll out the shoulders or roll the neck, whatever feels good. And open up the eyes if you haven't done. No rush. Well, thank you very much to all of you for tuning in. And if anyone resonates with anything that I've shared from my story, I am grateful to have been of service. And if anyone cares to discuss any of what has come up for you, then please do reach out and let's talk, let's connect. I wish you all the very best. From my heart to yours, maximum love. Have a beautiful day.